We are excited to bring you this episode brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate in men's hygiene bundles. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code MOWPODCAST20. That's MOW Podcast20. Visit manscaped.com, chuck the code in and enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. Today's conversation, oh boy. When we started this podcast, we made a dream list of chats that we wanted to have, and this was definitely one that we got to tick off the list today. Australian musician, author, advocate, and incredibly well-spoken human being, Josh Pyke. Josh is hands down one of the best Australian songwriters and someone that Murph and I are huge fans of. And throughout this chat today, he dropped some real pearls of wisdom, so keep an eye out for them as lyrics for the next album.
Happiness for me is just feeling kind of nothing in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just feeling even keeled is happiness for me, because that's when you can experience the highs and lows and really appreciate the highs and lows without spiraling into either one. So for me, like, sure. I mean, I just sort of have articulated that just then, but I think that's what I would mean by the search for happiness is just trying to find a state of equilibrium.
We are super grateful to Josh for joining us for this conversation today. Please, everybody, enjoy our conversation with Josh Pyke. Shout out to friends of the pod, Jake Carroll and Nick Morgan, for guessing this one right.
Thank you. Josh, thank you so much for being happy to jump on. We are very excited. This is sort of, I'll get the fanboy stuff out of the way very early. This is sort of like one of my dream conversations. I don't know if you can see, we have this book that we put together at the very start, like the podcast. That's, we didn't even have a name when we started it. This is going back to 2018, 2019, when the idea of the podcast began, and we had our wish list written down, and you are dead set in the top. We've got 22 names on this list, and you are one of the first names we wrote down. So,
who else did you have in there?
So we've got like
we've done.
That's a great question. We should check this out. We have got some sports people. So we've got Andrew Redmayne, who, that's a bit biased. He's my brother-in-law. He plays soccer. He's a Socceroo, but we thought great place to start. Sam Frost, AFL footballer, that we've ticked off. Corey Maynard, AFL footballer / NBL basketballer. And then in the music world, we've got, there's a couple of AFL guys. I've got Paul Kelly in here.
Oh, wow.
Michael Muff that's his dream conversation, and you were my dream musician conversation. So
you've talked to Paul Kelly?
No, we haven't spoken to Paul Kelly yet, but it's
going to happen now. You've manifested.
Manifesting away. Absolutely. Big time, mate. So I'll get that out of the way. You are, generally, I mentioned to my old man, he and I sort of grew up together. I grew up with him listening to you every Sunday morning, mate. So it's an absolute honor to sit down and have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to hear.
Yeah, thanks. Essentially, before we jump straight into it, a bit of a concept on the Men of Words. I don't know if you were informed a little bit of what we do, but it's a men's health / mental health podcast. We began this, like I said, a couple of years ago, after Michael and I both went through some challenges with our own mental ill health, and we realized together as best mates how important these conversations were and how much they helped us when we had these conversations with each other. And then the concept was born, and the idea of sitting down with childhood heroes and people that we all look up to, and hearing their stories was I guess how it all began. So
cool.
We are really, really humbled to be sitting here with you, mate, and really, I guess, excited to see where this conversation goes. I know you're an absolutely incredible storyteller. So really looking forward to it.
Cool.
Awesome. I will stop the fanboy stuff and let's get into it, mate. It's very exciting, and I would definitely jump into the new music. Recently released your latest album only a couple of days ago, officially, which is very exciting. So we'll get into that absolutely. But one thing we'd love to do is sort of start with a bit of a, not icebreaker, a bit of a mystery question that we want to break down the walls a little bit earlier and have a bit of fun to start with. But I couldn't decide between these two questions. So I've themed them. One is more something that I guess would see more insight into you as a person, and the other is a bit more of a fun question. So
right, yeah.
I don't know. I haven't decided which one. So I want you to pick whether you'd like to do the fun one or if we go straight into it and get to know you as a person.
Oh, let's go for fun. We're going to be talking about me enough in the next little while. We'll go for fun.
All right. Sounds good. So I am a school teacher, and this is legit. So this one hits home for me, but this will be interesting. And I'd love to know, you can either choose to answer this in response as you as a child, or as a father. Okay. Because I know you're a father of a couple of kids. Why did the school, or did they ever call your parents for something that you did at school? Did you get in trouble and did the school call you? Or as a parent, has the school that your children possibly attend called you ever?
No, I mean, I was, my kids are very good so far. So they haven't been busted for anything. The only time that my parents had to come to school was because I got my head stuck between two, it was a play structure, like one of those wooden play structures, and it had a kind of like, almost like a monkey bars, but they were made out of the thick sort of half plantation pine logs. Remember those? Yeah, that you would walk across. And I had like tried to lower myself through them, and I had got my head stuck in them, and I didn't have the strength to pull myself back out. And so I was, very upset and hysterical, and they got me out, but then I just wanted to go home. And so I had to call my parents. So nothing naughty. I was pretty good. I mean, I never got busted for anything.
Yeah. Well, that's the important thing, right? That you get through school as long as you're not busted. But you know what? That's a brilliant, looking back, that's quite funny. I'm sure
it was, yeah. I mean, it was, well, I remember it quite vividly, and it was very traumatic and very embarrassing. But
sure.
Yeah, very funny.
How old were you? Do you remember?
I was probably 8. I remember I was about my youngest kid's age now. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Well, hopefully you don't have to go out and do a playground rescue.
No, well, these days everything's so like, thought out. There's like softball everywhere. Everything, they would have measured the average sized kid's head and made everything like
everything smaller.
Everything, yeah, or bigger to allow heads of every size to get through. So
to come back. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I'm a primary school teacher. We had an emergency rescue in the playground a couple of years ago. When I say emergency, a kid got his leg through 2 poles, like you climb up to the top of the slide and they got those metal barriers around it.
Yeah.
He got his leg through the gap, couldn't get back. It wasn't a huge emergency, but we had like 3 fire trucks, the SES with the jaws of life to pull open the playground. It was quite an ordeal. But
and then you just realized that he just needed to turn his leg this way.
Literally just rolled and pulled it out. The fire was like, oh, well, we're here now, so let's spray the hose and get the sirens going.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But there you go. Oh, thank you for that. That's quite funny. I think for me, my parents only ever got phone calls when I was injured. I was that kid.
Yeah.
So I had broken arms and collarbones and knocked out at school and all sorts. So they only ever got a phone call to come and get me, to take me to hospital pretty much.
I guess it's better than getting busted for smoking weed in the back
corner.
Quadrangle.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Josh. We'll go into I might save the other question for later, but for now let's jump into it. And and I'd love to get to know, I think I read earlier that earlier on in the piece that music sort of came into your life very early. I think your first band you joined as a 12-year-old. And I'd love to know, you know, were you a part of a musical family growing up? You know, was it always always where you were going to go down the path of, or did it sort of fall into your life around that age?
We were always a very musical family. So my parents are both really into music. Mum was a really good piano player and singer, and Dad was a very bad singer, but sang a lot and played piano and, you know, could play a bit of guitar and stuff. They could both play guitar actually. So there's always music around the house, and they had a really amazing record collection. I think my dad had been in, you know, some fun bands, you know, when he was a teenager and stuff as well. So music was definitely, like, I would say that I would say my parents, like, you know, part of their identity was music.
Sure.
But I was very shy. Like, I was a very shy kid. But then my friends in year 6, they started this band and they were going to do a performance for the year 6 graduation, you know, assembly.
Right.
And they knew that I could sing because I'd, you know, always been in the choir and stuff like that. And they asked me to join the band as my best mate, Dan, was the drummer. And he was like, you know, join as the singer. And I remember he called me up and I was like, no way, no, thank you. And I hung up. And then I told my mum, she was like, just do it. Just, like, please do it. Like, if you do it and you hate it, you never have to do it again. But if you do it, if you don't do it, you could regret it for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, okay. Because there was some, I mean, she would obviously recognized that there was some music ability there, and that actually music was important to me. So I did it, and I was absolutely terrified, but I was just absolutely, completely hooked. And then we left high school and left primary school and went into high school, same group of guys. We were in a band all the way through high school, you know, a couple of different members. And then after high school, pretty much that same group of guys tried to, you know, pursue a career in music in this punk band that I was in for years and years. And then even when I went solo, 2 of the guys were in my solo band until they both eventually, you know, went on to get jobs and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty much from the age of 12 onwards, it was the only thing that I was thinking about.
That's incredible. 2 things maybe the biggest thing that stood out for me in your response then is you spoke about your best mate being the one that reached out to you to get the wheel. Are you still best mates with him now? Like, is that your current best mate?
Yeah, he's the best man at my wedding, and yeah, we see each other often.
Yeah. That's incredible. I love that. You know, Michael and I we've known each other probably, you know, 15 years, I'd say, from high school. But I'm getting married later in the year, and my 3 groomsmen are primary school best mates as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think, you know, friendship's such an interesting thing. It's like the friends that I have from when I was a kid, they're more like my brothers, you know, like it's more like family. And, you know, I reckon if we met now, we wouldn't necessarily have that much in common, you know, like what we have in common is, like, you know, brotherly love and shared experience. You know, we shared so many experiences from the age of, you know, 5 until, you know, we did all our experimenting with, you know, drugs and alcohol together, and, you know, we traveled the world together, and then we're in this band together for years. So yeah, it's definitely more than friendship at that point. I think it's more just like, it's basically family, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Is it like a friend for 7 years? If you get past 7 years, then you're friends for life. You become family, sort of thing. I think that's
I haven't heard that, but I like that. Yeah, that stands. That sort of stands. Stands the test in the people that I can think of.
Yeah, for sure, and the same for me. I think it's so important to have that ability to, or not ability, but to have those relationships for that length of time as well. You know, you've always got, you know, you've got your mates for life, and you can call upon them whenever you need. You might not see them every single day. You might see them once a year or once every 10 years, but you can.
I think it's the thing of just like, yeah, maybe they're not, maybe you don't call on them maybe you don't call on them in those trying times, but you know that you could. It's kind of like, it's just having that kind of I don't know, support in your back pocket kind of thing. You're like, well, I won't, there's been plenty of times that I haven't called that particular group of friends during difficult times, and have called newer friends, like, because I sort of had two phases of my life. One was pre becoming a professional musician and post becoming a professional musician, and I've made friends who are equally as dear to me since becoming a professional musician as well. And sometimes, those people are the people that I would choose to call about things, because I know that they'll have a perspective on it that I need, whereas, a lot of, it's a pretty unique job being a musician, and it is kind of hard to talk about the struggles that go along with it to people that aren't musicians, because it just sounds like you're complaining about having this awesome life, but it's not always awesome. So
I can only imagine. I mean, it's, you look at the statistics of people that are musicians and people that are professional musicians, and the ones that make it to the highest level and sell the millions of records, and that, it's a grind, no doubt. And
yeah, it is.
It does make sense to hear that you've got, I don't know, that you call like not more or friends that are better dealt with in different situations. And
I basically got a spreadsheet, and then like I can type in like music or anxiety or like relationships, and then it'll spit out,
search the tags,
the best friends for the job.
Dial in. I might have to get that template off you.
It's good. I took a while to work it up, but it's actually the algorithms, they're pretty accurate. So
it's come out all right. That's good. Hopefully the mistakes you've made with it, I won't have to make as well. So that's
great.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, thanks for that. That's really cool. And I guess with your journey as a professional musician, the songwriting is a massive part of that, and lyrics, and we'll get into your work as an author as well. I'd love to know, I guess, progressing with your music, where the love of language, I suppose, has come from, because you, like I said earlier, you're an incredible storyteller, and a lot of your songs are just real deal stories and experiences, and told in a way that is very easy to listen to, and sometimes dark stuff, but it's still, because of the beauty of the music, a lot easier to hear and absorb and understand. I'd love to know, I guess, the love of language, and where did that come from?
Well, I guess my folks were both like real word nerds. Mum was a English as a second language teacher to adult migrants, and Dad is just a nerdy English guy that like is really pedantic about grammar and stuff. So that would always like, there was definitely, I don't know, it was just a thing, I guess. Like we'd play this game around the kitchen table called I think everyone knows it now. It's called Dictionary, but it wasn't a real game when we were kids. You just like choose a word out of the dictionary and make up a fake definition for it, and then try and basically lie to people. And so somebody would get the real definition, and then nobody would know which one was which, and you had to basically try and sell your fake definition as the real definition.
Great.
It was really fun, like you learned how to make really serious sounding definitions of words. So say the word was, I don't know, what am I going to think of? Say the word was like, or podiatrist. You didn't know what a podiatrist was. You'd break down the word, and you'd go like pod. Okay, so maybe seed pods. Okay, and it's such, and then you'd make up and sometimes you'd make up funny ones, like you'd be like, this is a therapist for seed pods or something, a podiatrist, or so there was always a culture of language and words and reading in our household. Massive readers, my whole family. But I guess just really was just my thing. And from a really early age, I was always writing stories and writing poems and stuff like that. And I just really enjoyed that process, like I would spend hours writing stories. I wish I still had them, but like, big old books that Mum would bring home from work, and I'd just try and write, stories, and I was obsessed with like Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer and adventure stories and stuff like that. So I think it was just the thing that I was drawn to. Some people are good at sport and are drawn to sport and stuff, and I was just drawn to creativity and words in particular, and expressing myself through words. But I feel like, because even through my punk band days, I was trying to push the limits of normal punk songwriting. But I feel like it was when I was about 25 or something, I feel like I kind of was influenced by enough things to kind of step over some kind of line and start making my own thing. So I remember, like, it was sort of around the time where I loved Elliott Smith, and then Augie March came on the scene, and also like Tom York. So it was kind of like those three lyricists. Between the three of them, I felt like I was like, oh, right, so you can sing about darker stuff but with beautiful music, like Elliott Smith does. And then with Augie March, I was like, oh, you can be really wordy and use imagery that is kind of not that usual. And then Tom York, the way he just sings really abstract stuff that somehow evokes a really familiar kind of scene. So I think it was like those three things in my early 20s kind of came to a bit of a head in terms of influences, and I felt like I found a voice that I wanted to pursue, and that was pretty much when I went solo as well. So
yeah,
it all kind of happened at the same time.
It is an interesting transition, I suppose, between the punk and I guess like the acoustic side of things that you do a lot of in your solo music as well. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that, I guess, progression of personal life, I suppose, and external influences changing the way you saw music.
Yeah, well, we were all like in that band, we were all kind of had really eclectic taste in music, but the music that we ended up playing together was it was sort of like a cross between, like maybe At the Drive-In and Foo Fighters and Trail of Dead or something like that. So pretty melodic, but not particularly poppy. And yeah, it was just a natural thing. Like we all loved Radiohead as well, and Augie March and Something for Kate and stuff. It was a kind of like a litmus test of all the shit that we liked, and then chuck it into a funnel, and then slowly over the 8 years that we're in this band together, out the other end came me as a solo artist. Really, everybody else, went on to do other things.
Yeah, so I must have gone back into that spreadsheet you were talking about earlier and pumped out with the algorithm. So that
I had a different spreadsheet for that. Yeah,
page 2.
It's really good as well.
No, you're nailing it. That's great. The Augie March one, like something that jumps out to me. I reckon that One Crowded Hour, I think they won the Hottest 100 with that years ago. I honestly, I can't remember how old I was. I was pretty young. And I remember vividly, that was pretty much the song that gauged my interest of Triple J and, taught me all these different sounds and genres of music just through listening to Triple J. And Augie March, hands down, yeah, I remember that vividly.
They were, for me, Augie March was a massive, like, I'd never heard of a band. I remember, like, it was to the point that the punk band that I was in, we recorded an EP with a guy called Paul McKercher who had recorded Sunset Studies, which is their first album.
Cool.
Excuse me. And we were just in awe, and we were saying to Paul, like, how did they record this? Like, how did they? And he was like, what do you mean? They just recorded it pretty much live as a band. We were just blown away. And I actually went to see Augie March play Sunset Studies from beginning to end just 2 weeks ago in Sydney, and it was incredible. I still got the same sort of feeling from their music and from them as a bunch of guys, because they were normal dorky guys, like they weren't they didn't look like rock stars. They looked like the people that I knew from uni and stuff, and so, but yeah, it was just a seminal moment for me, realizing that you could write, sort of intelligent, nerdy lyrics and still get played on Triple J pretty much.
Yeah.
And actually that people responded really well to it.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Like it different enough that it gets people's attention and draws them in with these, amazing lyrics and storytelling ability. It encapsulates the imagination, I suppose, of the listener. It's the main, and it's something that I think even, I mentioned before, I'm a primary school teacher, and the work you do as an author with children's books as well, and your ability to engage Lights Out Leonard, for example, is an absolute classic. I believe, like the journey that it takes, and I'm people that haven't read it need to, even as adults read it. I loved it, and like just the genius behind it of like minty breath. So hey kids, brush your teeth at night.
Yeah.
Just little things like that is gauges the audience, and it's very.
I think those sorts of things for me is just like it's about just retaining your sense of play and childlike play. And I definitely as a father, I feel like that's something I've done. Like I've spent more than my fair share of hours on the ground being a truck or whatever, and you just kids have such an awesome imagination. It's so untethered to anything, and so they're so unrestrained. And if you me and my wife never, we sort of always just, we just say like, be, home is where you just be your crazy self. So they're always like making weird things, and they'll get these, like they talk about these creative urges that they get. And so suddenly they'll be like painting some clay, or like we gave them access to like fire and matches and stuff like that pretty early on. So they're always out in the backyard, like making fires and doing stuff like that. And, that's how I grew up. And I just think, imagination and creativity is really the most important attribute, a human can have these days, because it encapsulates so many things. It can encapsulate, the creativity and imagination to innovate ourselves out of all the trouble that the world is in at the moment. But it can also, you need imagination and creativity to have empathy, and to have to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes, which is really what the sort of traits that we need people to have, especially young men. And you need imagination and creativity to be kind of like drilled into your brain. You don't need rigid thinking. I think it's the most important thing. And so for me, when I'm writing songs or writing kids' books, it's really engaging in that part of myself still, and keeping that part of myself open. I think I just kind of was lucky enough to always have that,
Yeah, for sure. There's a quote from one of my favorite movies of all time, Step Brothers.
I thought you were going to say Die Hard.
Yeah,
that is a really good film as well.
That's a great flick. We won't get into that one because we could talk for a little bit too long. But Step Brothers, and the quote is, "Don't lose your dinosaur." I don't know if you've seen Step Brothers, but
I saw it a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a ripper. But essentially, as a kid, one of the guys, Dale, used to walk around and be a dinosaur, and they got up to play at that show, the Catalina Wine Mixer or whatever, and he was the drummer, and he was nervous as all hell, and he didn't want to do it. And then Will Ferrell was the singer and didn't want to do it, and one of their dads, called out like, you don't lose your dinosaur. Don't lose your dinosaur. Like, remember that time as a kid when you used to walk around and harness that creativity and that imagination. And that is like dead set. That quote from that movie is a joke. The whole thing is a joke, but that has stuck with me since I saw it the first time. And very similarly, I think in every aspect of life, whether it's work or at family, you need, and you mentioned the creativity to help with empathy, especially as young men as well. But I think the creativity and that imagination needs to go into literally everything you do.
100%. Yeah. I just think rigid thinking, or the sort of, I think, like there's a tendency for a lot of people to say no to ideas just straight off the bat. They hear an idea and they say no. And I'm way more about just saying yes and then figuring it out. And there's sort of it's also in terms of conversations as well. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you keep saying, no, but that's not, it just shuts dialogue down. Whereas if you're like, yeah, right, it's just the way you frame things. And it's a big thing I've never done improv, but it's a big thing that in the improv community is like, you always say yes to the idea. So if somebody, if you're improvising a scene, the person says, all right, so now I'm a chair. You never say like, oh no, what about you're a better? You just say, yes, okay, you're a chair, and I'm going with it. And I think that's a big, an important part of life is just the ability to be able to think creatively and keep things flowing. And that sort of flow is definitely that's a kid quality. It's a quality that kids have,
Oh yeah. I see it every day. And that's one of the reasons I'm so lucky to call myself a teacher and work with, primary school age kids, is the joy that, I could be having the worst day of my life in terms of outside of school, but I know that I get to work, and from 9 till 3:30, those kids are going to bring me nothing but joy. And, I might get cranky at some because they're missing out on instructions or whatever. I think that's natural, but then you sort of have to take a backward step and go like, hey, like, today, for example, even today, I was outside for PE today, and one of the kids was just sitting there watching this plane fly across the sky while I was trying to explain the next task. And I was like, come on, mate, like, listen, you need to listen. He's like, yeah, no, you can just see his eyes wandering again. And he said to me after, he's like, I haven't seen a plane over the school for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So, like, because of COVID, the planes had stopped for a while, and I kind of forgot. And, I was like, oh, fair enough. Good call.
From the mouths of babes, there's a reason for that expression, isn't there?
Exactly right. I want to keep with the language theme just really quickly for a little bit longer and touch on some of the work that you do. I guess it's related to music in a way, but with some of the work that you do with Busking For Change. But the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, I believe you're an ambassador.
Yeah, I'm a lifetime ambassador. So
Lifetime
I've been ambassador since like 2009, I think.
Huge.
And yeah, they're amazing. I mean, I still work. We're actually in the process of developing the Busking For Change idea into something much bigger, which I really hope will work and get off the ground. But they're just, for me, that like they do something quantifiable, like they deliver culturally appropriate books into remote Indigenous communities, and that's it. There's no agenda. They're not government funded. They're all based on donations. So there's no agenda beyond raising literacy levels in remote Indigenous communities, but not just in English, in their own languages. And it's all sort of vetted and okayed by the elders of the community. And yeah, they just do an incredible job.
It's so important. There's so much work that needs to be put into that, as it should be a government funded scheme, because
but it's difficult with it because there's so much mistrust in Indigenous communities of government.
Correct.
For really good reason. So the ILF's always wanted to stay independent. For me, it was just like it was about 2008, 2009. It was my second record come out, and everything was going great. And I'd been reading a lot of like books. I can't remember, like Blood on the Wattle and stuff like that. There was one in particular that I can't remember the name of at the moment, but and I was just like, sort of, I'd learnt a bit about the history of colonization and the atrocities that had been put on the Indigenous Australians. I knew a bit about it, but I it wasn't really a thing that you were taught too much about in the 90s in schools.
No way. Yeah.
And I started reading about it, and I just like felt sort of palpably like outraged, and so, I didn't want to do something that was sort of part of something so huge that you couldn't see if it was making any kind of impact. And my wife at the time was working in the publishing industry, and the ILF started within the publishing industry. And so I knew about them through that. They were brand new. They were like sort of operating on the, smell of an oily rag. And so that's why I started Busking for Change, because I was like, well, I know that I can't go out and deliver these books to these communities. And I know that I can't personally, make these books, or I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, but I was like, I know that I can put on a show and raise some money and then give it to the right people. So that's how that started. And from there we've done loads of stuff. And I wrote the song with Justine Clark and an Indigenous opera singer called Deborah Cheetham, and these kids from the Garrawa Indigenous College in Sydney. We wrote Words Make the World Go Round, which is kind of like their theme song. And that song is just like keeps on traveling, it's like raising awareness every year, just out in the world. So yeah, they're fantastic,
mate. That is the timing of you bringing up Words Make the World Go Round. We at school last week celebrated Harmony Day, and our music teacher actually put forth that song, the video with Justine, and that got blared across our whole school for on repeat. It is unbelievable. I was listening to it again today, just getting myself ready, and the lyrics in it, some of the lyrics, words will change the world. That's why they're so intriguing. And like words will be your friend.
Yeah. So these are all like, we did a writing workshop at this college with these kids from this Indigenous college in St. Andrews in the city. And it was like kids from sort of 5 or 6 through to 15. And so they all contribute, we'd say, I was trying to structure the song, it's quite hard doing songwriting workshops. And I was like, okay, so this is the framework of the song. We need a verse, and then we've got this chorus. And I was like, so what's the thing that you like about words? Why do they make the world, what is it that you like about it? And this 15-year-old kid, he was like, they're really intriguing. I was like, intriguing? Well, that's a great word in itself. It's like not, you don't usually find that word in a song. So it was all driven by the kids. And then we actually, like in perpetuity, signed over the royalties of that song to the ILF. So every time somebody plays it or whatever, or streams it, the money goes to the ILF, which is really cool. So so hopefully this thing that I'm working up with them will turn into something bigger. So yeah, fingers crossed.
How good. I can't wait to see it. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to see that. And we are currently building our capacity at my work in terms of the cultural understanding and awareness, and the correct way to teach and educate our kids about it. And I think our school will be a very intriguing place to watch develop. I mean, we as a school, we don't have a lot of Indigenous students at all, if any, that are known. I think maybe 1 or 2. So we, in the past, there's not been a lot of talk about it, but we, over the last 2.5 years, have really been making an effort as a staff and as a team to include the correct things. And
but isn't it crazy? It's like, it's 2022 and we're still like, even up until, I've been an ambassador for these guys for 11 years, but it was only in the last like 18 months that I realized that I should be doing an acknowledgement of country at all my shows. And the reason that I didn't do it is because I felt embarrassed about getting it wrong or saying it wrong or making it too official. And I actually spoke to a mate, Greg Dries, who's on the ILF, he's another ambassador. He's an Indigenous bloke. And I was like, what should I say? And he was like, just say anything. It doesn't matter. Just say, acknowledge the people of the place that you're at and just say it however you want to say it. But the point is the acknowledgement, and he was like, the point is just to show acknowledgement that you're on Indigenous land. And I kind of realized then there was like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. You don't have to do it at the beginning. You can do it after 3 songs.
Sure.
You don't have to turn it into this, sort of prohibitively formal thing. Just do it. It's an acknowledgement, just make the acknowledgement.
Yeah, it's so simple, isn't it? Like it's a simple concept, but still being it's relatively difficult to impart in every everywhere we are. So
yeah,
hopefully,
I think people just feel intimidated by the idea of it, or but you don't have to. So that was the thing that has really come up. Well, it was sort of really made clear to me.
For sure. No, it's an interesting lesson, I suppose. Yeah.
Just the usual.
Please. Good sir. Thank you.
Oof. Well, it's good to see you, my friend.
Good to be back, Murph. Ready for a clean up.
Oh, luckily.
And I'm very excited to be talking about the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 coming to our Men of Words community.
What is it?
They've just jumped on board as sponsors. We're very stoked to have them on board. And we've got one here that we're doing a bit of a run through. They've got everything for your male grooming needs that you could possibly have. Got our weed whacker for your ear and nose hair. Got to get around that stuff. Now that we're 30, Murph.
Yeah.
Not young men anymore, so got to be thinking about this stuff.
Noticed that happening.
What have we got? We've got plenty of goodies in here. You're giving me the run over with the Lawnmower 4.0. Multi-purpose groomer, obviously handy below the belt, but we're repurposing it for the noggin today, which we love. We've got our Manscaped crop preserver, and we've got our ball toner as well. Just keep things nice and tidy and fresh down there, as you love. Got a beautiful set of chafe-free undies to go along after a fresh shave, just in case you need it. Accessories for days that we can see through here. You've got yourself a lovely leather bag that it all goes in as well. And we're stoked to have them on board. Murph, we've also got a little bit of a discount code for our Men of Words community, don't we?
That we do.
Yes.
You guys can jump online at manscaped.com and use the code MOPODCAST20, MOW podcast20 for 20% off and free shipping. How good is that? And do you know what, Muff? I'm loving this because I could probably do this at night time. There is a little light just here, which makes me get so much more visibility down behind here in the shade.
Tell you what,
and it would be very handy down below, mate.
The Manscaped crew have thought of everything. Jump on, use our discount code, love it. Thanks for the support, Manscaped. Get around them.
I'm kind of curious to know if you think there's any ties. I mean, you mentioned earlier your mum worked in teaching English as a second language to migrants, and obviously the foundations of understanding and being culturally aware and of all the challenges that are involved in that as a job, whether you think that was sort of passed on from your mum without really understanding it, maybe as a kid, and then looking back now.
I think, I mean, I actually have been thinking about this a bit because I've got to write a speech for this conference because this book of mine, Family Tree, is about diversity. I mean, my wife is Vietnamese, and so one whole side of my family is Vietnamese. My kids are non-white kids, so it's something I've thought about a lot. And I do think, when I was really little, Mum was teaching at TAFE for adult migrants, and she'd come home with all these stories of these incredible stories of people's challenges and lives to get to Australia and what they're having to do to get ahead, like come here as adults without the language, having to support their families and kids. And I'd go in, if I was crook or whatever, I'd go in and go into work with her, and I'd sit there in the class, and these, I'd be given like all these delicious foods and stuff from other cultures by all the other students just loved me, like little blonde, blue-eyed boy. They'd be like, oh, be really nice to me. And I was like, it would, cultural diversity was never something that was scary or confronting to me. It was always something that was, definitely embraced in our family and like celebrate, like Mum was very admiring of these people. So to me, it was expressed as something that was, these people were amazing, and this was not something to be fearful of. And then when later in her career, she was an academic writing teacher for like students at UTS, like international students. And so she'd have these parties at the end of the year at our house, and so all the students would come around. And again, it was just it was never something that I even thought about as being like cultural diversity was never something that I thought about as being abnormal or different. I mean, I grew up in the west of Sydney. It was pretty multicultural. My high school was very multicultural, and yeah, so I think it was just, I don't know, I think it was just never
a thing. Yeah.
It was just never a thing.
Yeah.
But having said that, it was not a thing to the point where I kind of thought that I was totally across the issues around diversity and racism, and even early on, like homophobia and stuff like that. I was always just like, oh, I don't care. Like, I'm not homophobic. I don't care if my friends are gay or not. So therefore I'm across it all, like and what I've come to realize is, as a person who like racial slurs or homophobic slurs aren't directed at, it's really easy to kind of it's easy to trivialize how harmful those things can be when they seem really innocuous to me, for instance, as a white guy. If my wife is in a situation where she feels uncomfortable because she's Asian, I have done, I know I've done it heaps of times, just trivialized that, gone like, nah, it's fine, don't worry about it, everything's fine, you see. Yeah. But the things that she's picking up on are not the things that I'm picking up on, because they're not directed at me. So as much as like I was raised in a way that would make me think that I'm completely tolerant and completely accepting of everything, I've actually realized in the last couple of years that, you still have to take that extra step of having empathy towards other people's lived experience, because it's not yours. And that just, all that means is just paying a bit more attention to it, really.
For sure. It's a really interesting point you raise, and it made me, as you were talking, it made me think of an experience that I had as, in the friendship group that I am with. And, there's about 20 of us boys that have been mates for, like I said, 15, 16 years now, some longer. One of them homosexual, and we have, as a group, never have had any issues with that. Would never have thought we'd said anything to upset him or to offend him. But the language, the choices of language that we use sometimes, I think about a year, maybe 2 years ago, he picked up on once and said, hey, just a reminder, the way you're talking, you might not think anything of it, and you might not think it's offensive, but if I didn't know you, I would understand it to be offensive. And, if I was just another gay guy at the bar and I heard you say something like that, or you send me a text message with words like that, which, I'm not saying it was myself that did it, but, just
no, I know
at
exactly
the time, you sort of don't realize the weight of language and
yeah, it's
the
really
way you
important.
go about things, unless
it's also incumbent on the person who's offended to try and see the other side of the coin as well. And this is a mate of yours, and obviously he was like, I know you didn't mean it, but yeah, let me educate you about this, because it makes me feel like shit. So yeah, it's just about communication and not being defensive as well. Like, there's a real tendency for people, just people, it doesn't matter what culture or race or religion or sexuality you are, there's a tendency for people to get defensive when they're pulled up on stuff.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And that's a real natural kind of response, but it's like that you just have to try and get over that as well. I don't know, it's hard. And I think it all just comes from getting older.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think, like the 26 year, like, a very similar experience. One of my dear mates is gay, and we knew that he was gay his whole life, but he didn't come out until he was 26. And when he did, it was kind of like, oh, finally, like, and even that, whilst that was said in a way to be supportive, like, oh, finally, mate, like we all knew, and everything's cool, don't worry about it. But that's trivializing the incredible effort and emotional turmoil that goes into coming out. Like, I don't know what that is like, and so there was a reason that he hadn't done it until then. And even though we're all supportive of it, it trivializes that big moment of his to say, yeah, so what, finally, good on you, like, we don't care. We should have said, good on you, love you, mate.
Yeah, thank you for telling us.
Thanks for letting us know. Like it's really simple, and it seems so obvious now, but at the time, well, I mean, I don't. Again, it wasn't necessarily me that did this, but it's at the time I can imagine the response was meant to be supportive. The response was made with love. The intention was love, but it's just, you just got to be careful of other people. It's all about empathy, and it's
for sure.
I think that just comes with experience and getting older and trying to see things, put yourself in other people's shoes.
Absolutely. It's probably a really nice place to transition the conversation into perhaps some of the more personal experiences that you've gone through yourself, and if you're willing to, as I mentioned earlier, the idea of the Men of Words podcast came about through lived experiences of myself and Michael, the co-host, and learning to speak up and actually also to listen. And that seeing a psychologist, for example, for myself, I had a lot of challenge with, I was okay. Once I got rolling, I was sweet. I was talking and offloading and everything. But when she turned around and came back to me with advice and lessons to take away, and I found that a really challenging thing. And we sort of really love to hear, I guess, if you're willing to share an example of a time that you've faced a really challenging experience personally, whether it be, I'm not saying mental health or anything, any experience in your life where you, I guess, have been challenged, and looking back are happy to speak about now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a really, ongoing relationship with anxiety that's very much in that ballpark, where it was I always felt like I was fine, and that there was sort of anxiety issues, medicated anxiety issues within my close family group, and I was always like, I've somehow escaped that, and around 2017, I think it was, it all came to a head, and I won't bore you with the details of kind of why, but it came to a head, and I started having these severe panic attacks. And at first I didn't know what they were, and it was incredibly confronting. It was like, just before shows, or just, it would just happen. It was really terrible, like proper, incapacitating sort of panic attacks. And it got to the point, and I hadn't talked to my friends about it at all. I'd obviously spoken to my wife about it, but it got to the point where I was like, I need some extra help. I'd tried to sort of sort it out myself. I'd done like lots of meditation and read, I'm a big sort of information nerd. So I read all about like what causes panic attacks and why they happen and what you can do. So I was exercising, I was meditating, and that really did help for a while, but got to the point where it just needed something more. And so I went to the GP and got the free counseling sessions, and eventually went on medication, and it was great. And I just, like the moment that it became manageable was the moment that I just was very open about it, because up until that point I was trying to kind of just white knuckle it through all these experiences. And as soon as I was just open, and whoever I was on tour with, I'd be like, I get these panic attacks, might be a time when I'm just like freaking out. That's what it is. It's like, if I just disappear or something, that's what it is. Come and check on me, And as soon as, and everybody I spoke to, everybody without fail had some experience, either themselves or someone close to them had experiences of it. And everybody without fail was just great and supportive. And, the scariness of admitting that I was having this issue was just unfounded. I didn't know that, obviously, but it just was unfounded. Everybody was great. And it's an ongoing issue. I mean, it led me to take a couple of years off touring to really get it all together. And during that period, I was really, it's sort of, I had to confront a bunch of other stuff. Like my mum, unfortunately, had severe Alzheimer's. So this was going on, she was sort of, excuse me, deteriorating throughout that period as well. So that was all sort of part and parcel of the same sort of thing. But yeah, just talking to people was the key to demystifying it and just humanizing the whole thing. And everybody was great. There's never been anybody that's gone like, oh, you fucking wuss, or
yeah,
oh,
right.
really, you're faking it or whatever. Nobody has said anything even vague like that. Everyone's been like, no worries, man, what do you need? Let me help you. I wish you'd told us about this sooner,
Yeah.
No. So I mean, I would 100%, 100% just encourage anybody who's having those sorts of issues to talk about it, because I reckon like 90% of the issue was, this is just in terms of anxiety, I reckon 90% of the anxiety was founded on bottling it up inside and not talking about it to anybody and sort of feeling ashamed. And, and as soon as I spoke about it, it was just, what's the word? Not demystified, just sort of like, I don't know, made it not embarrassing. Yeah, the weight just.
The weight. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's my sort of experience with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much for being so open and honest with that. I'd like to, I guess, echo it and say, my experiences were anxiety and panic attacks as well. And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the whole anxiety about it was the first chance to speak up and just let it all out, like that. Bottling up and holding. And like for me, the time came, I was living with my now fiance and a best mate and his partner, and the four of us were in an apartment together, and I was getting up for work and hating every minute of it. And it got to a point, the top of the pyramid, where I just exploded and couldn't get out of bed for work, and I was just crying and in hysterics, and I couldn't breathe. Really full on panic attack. And my partner at the time was like, I know, like I've seen this happening and building, and you just haven't wanted to tell me. And she's like, I'm asking you, are you okay? And I'm trying to give you the avenue to do it. And I knew she could tell, and I knew she was just trying to help me to speak, but I couldn't do it.
But it's interesting because I can't remember who said it to me. I wish I could. It might have been my mum, but I can't remember. Somebody said to me years ago, you suffer in silence. And I was like, nah, not me. I'm like like I'm talk all the time. I feel like I'm a pretty open person, and I write songs about my life, right? And then But I remember when this person said that, and my wife was like, yeah, this is you, like you don't there's like certain things that you just don't talk about, and you shut down as soon as they come up. And I sort of hadn't realized it, and those are all the things that had led to this, just bottling up of these particular issues that led to these broader issue of anxiety. And so I think it's like, even you often, sometimes you don't even know what you don't even know what you're sort of bottling up, and that's when that's when it is important for your friends and family to check in with you, because they'll see it before you do.
Hands down. I'm interested to know, like, if and stop me if it's something you don't want to talk about, but with you mentioned you had to pull out of touring because of some of the anxieties and some of the, I guess, issues you were trying to work through yourself. And you mentioned earlier how you had musicians, mates you've made since you became a professional musician, that you would go and they're the ones you'd talk to for certain things. Did you find yourself at that time maybe reaching out to the music side of, the art, or what did you say earlier, the after becoming a professional musician, like friends, or the pre-professional?
100%. It was just, that was the place, those were the people that I felt, knew what was up, and a lot of the anxieties, I guess, were around creativity and career stuff. And there's just nobody else is going to understand that except for, it'd be like, I don't know. Well, I guess it's like with any industry, but it's, there's some really specific things that
For sure.
that happen in a music career. And it was also just that I generally felt like artists and creatives were just a bit more open in their capacity to show emotion and empathy, and and I think that's changing. But I think that sort of thing comes with maturity, and I felt like that level of emotional maturity seemed to be more prevalent in creatives at that point in my life. For better or worse, right or wrong, that's how it was. And so definitely sort of felt more willing to be open with those people at that time.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it sort of just stuck out. Sorry, thank you for the response. It's interesting to, I guess, hear the support networks behind people, and I guess the specifics in when you go to who, essentially. So
I mean, you just have to trust your instincts. You just have to follow your instincts. There's no right or wrong with that stuff. And if you don't get what you need from somebody, there's no harm in just moving on to the next
for sure. Thanks. I'll try, not quite. Yeah.
You don't have to write that person off or anything. They're just,
no.
You have friends for different purposes, and they, like, there are some friends that I know are always going to be just the best guys to go and have a pub meal and a beer with. And then there's other people that I know will be the best ones to sit down and talk about, like, existential crisis and
for sure,
the state of the world. That's okay.
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely right. I guess in keeping with that theme, and you mentioned it's an ongoing thing, and there's never an end. And I found myself as well, there's never an end to my anxiety. I find myself getting anxious over completely unrelated things to what I was getting anxious over 3-4 years ago. But you as a person do so much work for other people in terms of, you've got your Josh Pyke partnership, you've got you've been an advocate in the Q&As and at Parliament House, for example, and I mean recently with the impact of COVID-19, which I want to touch on following this question. But I'd love to know what you do to work on yourself and to help yourself.
I think for me, it's definitely, medication helped a lot. But that came after 2 years of other avenues of, like, counseling and everything. So sort of, I think it's like once you've given yourself a bit of a breather and you've gained some perspective, then you can start to, for me, the biggest thing is exercise. Like, I've just found that is, like, I'm not a big sports guy or anything like that, but I guess maybe that's why it's so surprising to me. Maybe it's not as surprising to someone like you that, is obviously interest in fitness and sport and everything. But I was blown away by the impact that regular exercise has had on my mental health. And just, like, if I feel like crap and I just feel a lack of motivation for stuff, I'll just force myself to do 45 minutes of running or something, and I feel better, and then it can sort of tips you over into the next feeling of feeling okay. But also, it's just, I think the main thing is just going easier on yourself. Like, for me, there's nothing specific that I do. I don't really do meditation anymore. I used to do meditation a lot, but for me, it's mainly just going easier on yourself. So it's like, if I'm having a bit of a panicky day, I'll just be like, okay, well, that's okay. You're having a panicky day. You don't have to push through. You don't have to, like, just white knuckle it through it. You just say to the people around you, you're having a bit of a shitty day, and, just have a bit of a quieter day. That's fine, So it's just, for me, that's the biggest thing, is just going easier on yourself, and you don't have to be everything at all times. You know, you don't. That's not a realistic thing.
You don't have to be everything at all times. I love that. Yeah. No, I think it's an easy one to forget, to go easy on yourself, obviously. Especially for me, one thing I used to absolutely hate, was saying no to a mate.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
Yeah, like especially at peak of my anxieties, I'd still somehow find the energy to get up and go and grab a beer with a mate at the pub down the road. And now retrospectively, I definitely didn't need to be doing that. I see it in myself now, where I'm able to say, like, look, yeah, not today. I need to can that plan. And it's something I used to hate to do, but I'm still learning to say no, I suppose. And
yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge example for guys all over the world. Is like, when you, especially like as you get older, you don't have as many opportunities to like just go hang out
right
as you want. And so, like, I 100% know what you mean. It's like, I would always say yes to everything. And, and then sometimes I'd come home and I would have had the shittest time, and
yeah,
my wife would be like, why did you felt like shit before you went out? Why'd you go out? I'm like, because I don't know. It's what we do, It's what we do.
It's like counterintuitive, right? Like you feel like you should be doing it because you're with your mates, you'll feel better. But
unless you're going to specifically go out and really, bare your soul for, to try and help yourself. But I don't know. Yeah, I think, it is just, you don't have to do all those things all the time. And sometimes your mates will give you shit for it, but if they do, then just, they're not being good mates.
Well, that's it. Like, that's where you start to question whether you need to have people in your life that are not understanding.
And you have to have told them. But like, I remember there was a guy that I used to know in my early 20s who in retrospect was clearly suffering from some severe anxiety issues. And we just didn't know, didn't know. And so he'd just disappear from places. Like literally we'd be out and we'd look around and be like, oh, where did he go? And
where'd he go?
He would have bailed. And I really regret not knowing more about it all back then, to have been able to be a supportive friend, because I would have, but I didn't know anything about it. There was no sort of mental health education or, Beyond Blue advertisements back then. And he certainly didn't feel comfortable talking to us about it, which is a real shame,
Oh, no doubt. And, I reckon I could echo that sentiment 100% with a few friends that I used to be really close to that don't have, I wouldn't call friends anymore, only through probably my fault as well in not picking up on the cues, I suppose, or, trying to take that next step.
Again, it all comes from, it either comes from lived experience and then gaining maturity through that lived experience, or it comes from what I hope is happening, which is just, large scale education about this kind of stuff. I mean, my kids, in terms of all manner of, issues about, diversity, racism, sexuality, gender, equality, mental health, they're getting taught about this stuff from the time that they're 6-7 years old,
Yeah.
So it normalizes all that stuff incredibly. And, kids being, whatever it's, non-neurotypical and, different way, divergent thinking and all this kind of stuff. All that stuff kids are taught about from a really early age now. So I hope that by the time my kids are adults, it's just again, it's not a thing. But I guess you just don't want it to be not a thing to the point that they're not empathetic about it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you don't want it to go too far, right? Like, Josh, I'm sort of not pleasantly surprised, but I'm humbled at your openness and how candid you are with your personal experiences as well. And I want to thank you, I suppose, for being so open and stereotypically musicians, someone that I'm not very musically talented myself, and I see them as the perfect example. I see musicians as the perfect example of people speaking up and using their words to share and connect and help people find that that next, I guess, inspiration to look after themselves and find the ties and connections to their songs. So it's nice to hear as a fan, as a male and a human being as well, the other side of the stuff that is besides your music as well. So I want to thank you for that and for your candidness and openness, mate. It's been really, really pleasing. We'll jump forward to a bit of shop talk and music talk now, mate, and get into To Find Happiness, your latest album release. And I think it was like I said, last Friday possibly, Friday, not to put a timestamp on our conversation. So brand new into the world. And I'm as a fan, I'm going to fanboy again here for a second, mate.
Awesome.
I found a lot of connection to some of your early works, like a lot of ties to the Memories and Dust and Chimney's Afire records, and just the feel, I guess the overall feel of the records. And I reading information, I was really surprised to learn that you went and worked with Wayne Connolly again, who I think you worked with on Memories and Dust. Was that a deliberate choice, or?
It was definitely a deliberate choice. We didn't just.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just fucking with you, but it was So I recorded it all here in my studio where I'm speaking to you from. But with all my records, when I produce them, I don't want to mix them, because I want to get that sort of creative closure where you get a different set of eyeballs and ears on it.
Yeah.
And I just knew that Wayne, it's not like Wayne worked on the first, he did the first mini album, then he did Memories and Dust, and he worked on a couple of tracks on Chimneys of Fire.
Yeah.
He did all of Only Sparrows. Only Sparrows. And so we've worked, and we've done a whole lot of other stuff together as well over the years, and we've remained really good friends over the years. So I just wanted somebody that I knew I could trust, and I just know that, he would do a great job with it. And he'd been working out of this studio in Byron called the Music Farm. And I was just I just thought it would be a lovely experience to go hang out up there for 2 weeks and mix the record and finish the record off with somebody that I knew and trusted. And so we did that. I took the whole family up. We stayed up there for 2 weeks to mix the record. I think this is my best album, to be honest. But I feel like they're just going to get better from here as well.
What's the important thing? I haven't listened to it as many times as I have Memories and Dust, that's for sure. But I can already tell it's I'm not sucking up, and I'm not kissing your butt here. I have had it on repeat since.
Oh, I've already said it. I reckon it's all killer, no filler. I've said it. You don't have to,
Yeah, your words, not mine. But
yeah, exactly.
No, I loved it, and as soon as it was released, I sent the Spotify, not to name names, sent the streaming service link to my dad, and I was like, mate, you need to listen to this. This will bring back a few memories for you. So he wanted me to pass on that he absolutely loves it as well. And
thanks.
I want to. I mean, you sort of mentioned that. I think I read a quote from you about this in terms of the album, or the songs, or the process is not about being happy, but it's about like how fleeting happiness is, and the journey to find it. And I guess that's where the names come from. But it's quite a complex thing. And
I think there was a tendency for people to be like, and even in a few reviews and interviews, it sort of makes me think that people haven't listened to the record much if they're like, oh, it's such a happy album, it's just my like happy album. I go like, somebody said that recently. I was like, really? I don't know if you've listened to it.
Sure.
Because it's really not a happy album. I mean, but there's elements of it. I mean, it's referencing things that make me happy, and it's but it's I mean, every song is different, of course, as well. But I guess the recurrent theme is just, I don't, like, I'm not sort of one of those people that's trying to attain constant happiness. I don't think that that's doable, but I also don't. I don't think I'd want to be like just constantly happy, you know, like that's not really ever been a goal of mine. But I just think that, you know, you have to keep trying is basically it. You have to keep trying, and there's no other goal that's sort of like, it influences everything you do, is that idea of trying to be happy. And I don't mean happy in the idea of like euphoria, or feeling, I mean, in some ways I feel like happiness for me is just feeling kind of nothing in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just feeling even keeled is happiness for me, because that's when you can experience the highs and lows and really appreciate the highs and lows without spiraling into either one. So for me, like, I mean, I just sort of have articulated that just then, but I think that's what I would mean by the search for happiness, is just trying to find a state of equilibrium, you know, and that's kind of, you know, definitely during the period where I was having the anxiety attacks, that was, you know, I just didn't have that equilibrium. And so, you know, it's about like finding a sense of clarity and equilibrium rather than finding, you know, this euphoric happiness.
For sure.
You have those moments though. Like I've got this vivid memory of when my kid, one of my youngest kid, was about 3, and I remember like walking down the street holding hands with him, and I just got a coffee from the cafe, and I had this, like, honestly, like a wave of euphoria came over, and I was like, just love this kid so much, love this coffee so much, like love this, you know, sunny sky. And I remember that feeling of like euphoria, but that's not what I'm trying to attain, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
I just want to be in a state that allows me to fully embrace and engage in those moments, but also in the really shitty low moments, in a way that allows me to have a perspective on them where I can, you know, experience them properly without, you know, the whole issue with the anxiety for me was that you'd have these negative thoughts, and then you would just spiral into it. So it'd be one negative thought of like, oh shit, I don't want to do this show. And then I'd be like, well, if I don't do this show, then I won't get the next show, and then I won't be able to support my family, and then I'm going to end up on the street. And it was literally as bad as that.
Yeah.
You know, it was like one
and as quick almost. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just like, and then, you know, and then.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, what I'm trying to achieve is the equilibrium to have a shitty thought or a shitty moment, and then be able to go, that's all it is. This will pass like everything else, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, it's a true concept, I suppose. Like, if you, like you said, like, you don't want to be euphoric the whole time. Like, if you're that happy the whole time, are you really happy? Right.
Well, it's like that.
Where's the next high? Like,
it's like that old Persian myth, or there's an old Persian story about a king who, to paraphrase it, it's like, you know, he wins a war, and these people are like, you did it. How do you feel? And he's like, this too will pass. And then his son dies, and they're like, oh, you must be devastated. He's like, this too will pass. And then it just keeps on going and going. And it's true. It's like, you know, none of these, all feelings are fleeting. I mean, this is like the kind of Buddhist idea, but yeah, all of these feelings are fleeting, and you can just watch them go by. And what you're actually trying to maintain is the state of stability, that you can experience those things without letting them sort of consume you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, the way you describe like the equilibrium, you know, you feel the highs, you feel the lows, and I feel that connection in the record, in the album, of, you know, you've got some really upbeat tune, like Circle of Light, for example, starts and just bang upbeat, and that, you know, the music behind is really fun and engaging. You've also got some, you know, some really powerful ballads, and, you know, some lower you know, vibes, I guess, coming from your music as well. So it's a really, you know, I feel that roller coaster, that wave.
Yeah.
While listening to,
you know, songs like A Town You've Never Been To, you know, I wanted that to be kind of that journey in one song, where it's like, it starts off really intimate, and kind of yearning, and then it erupts into this joyous thing. But even that, like even the lyrics in that make me sad, even though it's because for me, when I think about that song, I think about my kids leaving home basically and exploring the world, and I want that for them, but that makes me feel sad. So it's
the instinct of a father. Don't go. Yeah.
But I want them to experience it. I want them to be, thinking of me while they're doing it. And then I also realize that they won't be thinking about me at all. I wasn't thinking about my family when I was traveling. Yeah.
No, for sure. Josh, mate, I think it's a really nice place to maybe leave it. And, on that high of I guess the next phase of your life is watching your kids grow up and take those experiences and, get to see the world. And there's one thing I would love to challenge you with to round out this conversation.
Yeah.
And I know you said earlier you used to always say yes, and I'm hoping that might stick true for this little challenge here, mate. And it's something as men that we don't do well, or not all of us, but we stereotypically don't do well. And a nice place to finish up would be that we'd love to throw down the challenge. It's something that was inspired from the guys at the Resilience Project. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, Martin Heppel and Hugh Van Cuylenberg. And it's about teaching resilience to the next generation and also ourselves. And the three key pillars of their program are gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness, and how simple it can actually be to express those three things in everyday life. And Martin is a huge advocate of telling his friends he loves them. And like I said, as men, we don't often do that, apart from maybe if we're 10 beers deep or whatever at the pub and professing our love to our best friends. And I'd love to maybe start by asking you if it's something that you do or have done in the past where you've genuinely told a friend that you love them.
Yeah, well, all the time. It's a big thing where I will always, and it's definitely something that's more since we've gotten older, but we'll always, sign off on our meetings up or phone conversations with, love you, mate, great to see you, whatever. I'm well down with that, with the love, well down with spreading the love.
Well rehearsed. Great. I'm gonna ask you if you have a phone, this is the challenge, is if you have a phone handy, would you be willing to call a friend and give them a 30-second blast? And if you don't have a phone, would you be willing to look straight down the barrel and give a mate a shout out and a bit of love?
I want to try and call my mate Jack Carty. He's on the road right now, but he's probably available. What do you want me to do? Just call him and say I love you?
Just give him a bit of a blast of love and tell him why you love him or what you're grateful for in your friendship, and pop it on loudspeaker, and that'd be awesome.
All right, let's see how we go.
Mate.
Hey, bro.
Hey, yeah.
Hey, I'm doing this podcast at the moment called Men of Words, and this is happening. You're on it now. You're being recorded for it.
Oh, I'm on it right now. Okay.
Yeah. And it's about talking to your mates and making sure that you tell your mates you love them and everything. And at the end of the podcast, they've given me the challenge to call a mate and tell them that I love them, and to word my friend up. So I've called you.
Okay.
So
awesome.
So
too,
I love you, and I hope are you playing tonight, or are you going to night off?
I'm playing tonight. I'm in Ballara in Victoria, which is in the Latrobe Valley, and I'm on stage in like 40 minutes.
Oh, beautiful. Well, this is a great opportunity to word you up and say you're amazing. Your new album is incredible. Your songwriting is great. You know that I think that, though. You're a fine young man. I think of you as a brother, and I truly value our friendship, and I love you, man.
Thanks, man. All of that right back to you, man.
I mean, you and I say this stuff to each other all the time, though, so this comes as no surprise.
Because we're snags.
We are snags. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, have a great gig, man.
Thanks, man. Love you, bro.
See you, brother. See ya.
See ya. Bye.
Maybe an anticlimax because we talk to each other like that all the time.
Not at all, mate. That is absolutely awesome, and thank you for being willing to do that. It's a good thing that you do speak to each other like that all the time. And it's really nice to hear, and yeah, thank you for sharing that experience with us and all our listeners. Really cool. Was it Jack Hardy? Did you say
Jack Carty?
Carty. Sorry, I misheard you earlier, but that's cool. We'll I'm going to chop that out of the video and send that to you as well, so you can relive it, because it is really nice to see. And you know, like I said earlier, a lot of men don't do that enough, and a lot of the guests that we've thrown that challenge to have come out dripping in sweat and, you know, shaking it from the nerves of it. So it's really cool to see the other side.
It's not something I'm afraid of.
No, that's awesome, Josh. That's really cool, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah. So Josh, thank you, mate. It's been an absolute privilege and absolute honor. And like I said, as a huge fan, I was very excited to be sitting down and having this chat with you, mate. And I'm very grateful for, how open and honest you are, and all the work that you're doing, not just in the music world, but in the background with the ILF and everything as well, and all your work with stories and books, and you know, the kids at my school love them, and it's a really cool thing. So thank you very much, mate, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And people, if you haven't listened to the new record, To Find Happiness, I urge you to, because it is an absolute ripper.
It's my best work yet, people.
Best work yet. Quote from the man himself. For everyone listening, thank you very much for your support and for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. This has been the Men of Words podcast, where the little conversations can make the biggest difference. Boom, boom.